الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله اتقوا الله اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون. لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة أصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحيم هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسن يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم هو الله الخالق البارئ هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسن يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم هو الله الخالق البارئ هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
ثانية على حب الزهراء صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Today's topic is called Through Hardship and Ease, and where tawakkul comes in, where reliance on God, on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes in, and Sheikh Aus inshallah will delve into that topic today. Before we begin, I'd like to also just remind everyone that we are on our second or third day for some of Ramadan. We did create personalized journals for these 30 days with Quranic verses and reflections and just something to help you contemplate on these 30 days inshallah. So if you'd like to purchase them, they are outside the hall and they are in the library. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our beloved and esteemed Sheikh Aus Asfar with 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. ثانية على حب الحسن والحسين. ثالثة على حب سيدة نساء العالمين بأعلى أصواتكم. عجل فرجه. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم وقوله الحق. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Holy Quran, and what he says is the truth. In the chapter of Al-Baqarah, chapter 155, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in these verses, verse 155 to 157, He says, and surely we will try you with a little bit, بشيء من الخوف, with fear, والجوع, and hunger, ونقص, and a deficiency, بالأموال, in wealth, والأنفس, and health, والثمرات, and the fruits of your labor, وبشر الصابرين, and give glad tidings to those who are patient. الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا, those are the ones whom when they are hit by a calamity, they say, إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Surely we are from Allah, and to He we shall return. أولئك عليهم, upon these individuals, أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة, upon them will be the praises and the mercy of Allah. وأولئك هم المهتدون, and these individuals are the ones who will be deemed, who will have the label and the title of al-muhtadun, meaning those who are rightfully guided. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Every single human being in this world, brothers and sisters, no matter where you are in this world, whether you're in China or whether you're in Europe or whether in South America or North America or Africa, wherever you may be, you're going to go through a trial and a tribulation in your life. You're going to go through challenges in your life. The question is, how do we navigate through these challenges that we go through? And why is it that we have to go through such challenges, some might ask. Today our goal is to take a look at this topic of trials and tribulations and struggles and understand why it is that we go through such things. Why must we go through such things? Why is there such a necessity for every single human being, whether rich or poor, whether healthy or sick, to go through such trials and tribulations? And in order to do so, what we have to do is we have to look at this topic from three perspectives. First, we'll look at the logical perspective, right? Secondly, we'll look at the academic perspective. What do the halls of academia tell us? Lastly, we'll take a look at the Islamic perspective. Now, starting off with the logical perspective, we were able, as I said, when we start, we always have to start with a reference point, right? And our reference point always will be Tawheed for our lives, right? And I explained that Tawheed is what? Is not only proving the existence of Allah, but acting accordingly. Based on that proof, then you act, then you make decisions, right? Then you rationalize and figure out what you need to do next. Does this please Allah or not? Is this from Allah or not? Did I do something wrong or not? Should I go right or left? Which direction pleases Allah? That is the starting point of everything that I must do. And so, we go over the simple proof of proving that the Creator not only exists, but He is unlimited, which means He's all perfect. And we said a creator of something is greater than what they create. Agreed? If you agree, say I agree. Therefore, the creator of all of limitation is greater than limitation. Agreed? And therefore, He must be unlimited. Ahsantum, exactly. Which means that He neither has a beginning nor an end, which means that He always existed and will always exist. Agreed? And so asking the question, who created Allah or this unlimited being, is the wrong question. Ahsantum. Why? Because He is the only one who is uncreated, meaning that He does not need not even a creator. He is the ultimate creator because He is unlimited. Now you say, it's hard to wrap my head around that, Shaykhna. Say, yes, exactly. Why? Because we are limited. The end of the road, right? But this much I do know. I do know that He is most definitely unlimited, which means that He's everywhere. He sees all things. He sees me at all times, right? Which means that He's all-knowing. Agreed? Which means that He's all perfect because flaws are limitations, and He has no flaws because He is unlimited. Therefore, He is all, sisters, all perfect. The brothers beat the sisters this time. This is very rare. This is very rare. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all-knowing and all-perfect, that means He's also all-wise and all-just. He doesn't do anything without purpose. He is all-purposeful. Agreed? If you agree, say I agree. Which means that everything I go through in life is going to be with a purpose and for a purpose. Which means automatically any trial and tribulation in this world, not only is it going to be limited, it will have a beginning and an end, right? But also, since it's within Allah's system, that means that Allah will not burden me with more than I can handle. That means that any struggle that I go through, not only because it's in this limited world, it will have a beginning and an end, and that will make me happy because I say, my God, this calamity I'm going through, this trial, this tribulation, will it ever end? Good news, yes it will. The very system itself necessitates and dictates that it will end because it is a limited system. Agreed? If you agree, say I agree. Does it make sense? If it makes sense, say it makes sense. Good. Alhamdulillah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So far, this is just our logical discourse. Agreed? Yes? So now I say, all right, so that means then really whatever I go through in my life is either going to be from Allah or from my own human choices. Yes? Right? And I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if there's, for example, a natural disaster such as an earthquake, I know that within the organized system that He created, that there's got to be a purpose for an earthquake. That it's got to be that there's a buildup of pressure in the center of the earth. The tectonic plates are moving according to the science. And what's happening is energy needs to be released at the fault lines. And therefore those who live on those fault lines will end up eating the brunt of the movement of those tectonic plates, right? And the relief of that pressure. Otherwise, the entire system would explode. And many more people would die. And so those individuals dying near the fault lines, around the fault lines, because of the fault lines, right? Did they die with a purpose and for a purpose or no? Why do we say this? Because it is from Allah. And since Allah decided for this to happen based on His organized system, then that means that only Allah knows best what is good for this individual and what isn't. If injury is what's best for them, then they will be injured. You see? If death is best for them, then they will die. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the giver of life, and He is the only one that has the right to take a human life. Agreed? If you agree, say I agree. Why? Because He created us. And so He is the only one that owns us. Yes? I don't own my own life. So when you sign that waiver to jump, out of a plane to parachute for fun, or to bungee jump, that waiver you're signing is not your right to sign. You can't sign your life away. You don't sign off that which you don't own. Can you sell a house that you don't own? No. So why do you do that with yourself? So now I understand then that the question, but what about the senseless loss of life, Shaykhna? No, there is no senseless loss of life there. Because Allah makes the most sense and only does what is sensible, right? And even if I don't understand why that is the case, that doesn't mean that it isn't for a purpose and with a purpose and all just. Agreed? If you agree, say I agree. Good. Next, I have to deal with my own choices, logically, right? As a human being. I know human choices are either my own or someone else's. The very fact that I make a choice, right, means that it's going to affect somebody else around me in my environment. Let me give you an example, and I'll hit two birds with one stone. Of course, say no to smoking. Smoking is bad for you. But if I'm smoking and I end up with lung cancer, is that my fault or is that Allah's fault? It's my fault, exactly. Actually, it's a consequence of poisoning Allah's system. Make sense? If it makes sense, say it makes sense. So, but there are people also around me that secondhand smoke will affect. And my cancer will affect those people who are around me. It'll make them sad, right? It'll make them, feel as though they're going through the hardship with me. Agreed? If I lose my life, then who will suffer other than my kids? Agreed? Because of the choices that who made? Allah or me? Me. Now, the very fact that this system that Allah created allows for choices, and we said, choice is good or bad? In the first session, we said, choice is good or bad? Choice is? It's good, right? It's good. So, do any of you like to be forced to do anything? No, right? So, compulsion is bad. Could you say that it's oppressive to be forced to do something? Yes? Agreed? So, that means then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we already know, will not oppress. Yes? And therefore, He's not going to force me to do anything. He won't even force me to choose Him. You see? He gives me the power of choice because choice is good, even if it means that I defy Him and reject Him. He's that fair and that just. But that also means that my choices, if they are bad, they will not only affect me, but they will affect others. Now the question is that burdening the human being with more than they can handle? What do you think? If you're within Allah's system and He is the all just, that means He will not burden us with more than we can handle. Now, I might not be able to wrap my head around it because I'm emotional. I'm going through this calamity. It's tough for me to handle it. I see no end to it. But I know logically that it must come to an end, right? Because everything in this world is limited. Agreed? Which means that it has to have a beginning and it must have an end as well. So that means then that within this system, even if there's an evil dictator or a president of a country who is bombarding a land with bombs and killing innocent women and children, Allah allows this to happen. Why? Because He is unfair and unjust, or because that individual and his government are unfair and unjust? Did Allah bring these individuals to the world so that they can make the right choices, or so that they can make the wrong choices? So that they can make the right choices. But He tells them, you have the freedom to choose. Because freedom is good. And incarceration and imprisonment is bad. So Allah would only give us that freedom. He would create us free. Agreed? To make the choices that we need to make. But if someone makes a bad choice, then guess what? I eat the brunt of it. That child eats the brunt of it. Right? So how do I reconcile this? Are we not asking ourselves that question? How do I reconcile this? I reconcile this by saying this very system is obviously a system of testing. How so? Because I know that Allah is all perfect. I proved it, right? If I'm right, say you're right. You know I love hearing that I'm right. Right? So that means then, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all perfect, that means He's all just. He won't burden me with more than I can handle. And whatever choices occur in this world by other people, even if I am suffering from those choices, I still will not be burdened with more than I can handle. I will be able to handle it. And that's what we see every day. Even though they're going through such hardships, what do they say? They say, Alhamdulillah. The level of faith is tested. You say, you look at yourself and you say, when you're a child growing up, right? You know that as you're growing up, you're going through certain trials and tribulations. Maybe as you're, when you're a baby, you want to what? You want to move on to the next level. You want to turn, right? And then you want to, prop yourself up and start crawling, right? And even though you fall on your face, you scratch yourself up, you still practice crawling. And then automatically, what do? You start grabbing onto the table, the ends and the sides of the tables, and you try to lift yourself, right? So that you can walk. You hit your face on the table, you cry a little, you get back up, right? And then now you try to let go. Each level, you're building that muscle memory and that strength and that bone density and those neuronal pathways so that you can take the next step forward. And as you take the next step forward as a baby and as a child and you fall on your face, you get right back up. Look at them, right? For those who have seen babies, you know, right? For those who were babies at one point, you know. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Step after step, I fall and I falter and I get back up. This child keeps getting up, right? Asking for more. This is the very nature of the system. This is the innate, instinctual need to be driven forward towards growth and success, right? Agreed? If you agree, say I agree. Until I get up and I fall, I get up and I fall until I can walk properly. It's that very practice at each level of my life that allows me to become strong enough for the next level. To become resilient enough for the next level. To have the tools to navigate through the next level. It's exactly like playing on your game console. Of course, mashallah, many of you here like to play PlayStation and Xbox, right? We have a lot of gamers in the house, right? Mashallah. Very good. So you gamers, you all understand this, right? You understand that in order for you to get to level 2 of Call of Duty, what do you have to do? Huh? You got to pass level 1. And to pass level 1, what do you have to do? You have to understand what steps to take, where, go right, go left, which weapon to pick up, which one to leave, right? Am I right or am I wrong? If I'm right, say you're right, right? And once you get good, you move on to level 2. And in level 2, you wouldn't be at level 2 if you didn't pass level 1 and you were good enough. Agreed? Right? You're good enough now to be at level 2. And now when you're at level 2 and you're making your way through that game, and you're succeeding step after step, you're going to fall, you're going to falter, you're going to die a few times, but you're going to come right back to that game, much to your parents' discontent. Right? And you're going to be addicted to succeeding and moving from level to level to level. Every time perfecting a level. That need for perfection is what drives you and propels you forward. Agreed? If you agree, say I agree. So the system of life is no different. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me what? He gives me trials and tribulations to strengthen me at every single level of my life so that I can grow stronger and stronger so that I can take on level 2 and level 3 and level 4 and onward. Do you see? If you see, say I see. But with a little more contemplation, I see. Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. So that means then, logically speaking, this world, since my purpose, we said is what? Is to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gratitude for giving me existence, for basking in His perfection, for being in His presence, the presence of greatness. He's going to say, okay, well, let's see how grateful you really are, right? So He's going to test me. He's going to see, if you say, yes, you really appreciate me, right? And you believe that I'm unlimited and that I gave you existence and that you're going to work hard to prove to me, to make me proud, just like you would make your parents proud, right? Then, just like, for example, and the parents understand this, if let's say, for example, you have 2 children, one child who always hugs you and asks about you and does voluntary acts of kindness, they'll wash the dishes, they'll, clean your car for you without you asking, they just do it. Right? Before you leave the house, they come and hug you. Ya ummi, ya bayyi, bhabbak, right? And you're, right? And you feel that sense of connection to that child. It's not that you're not connected to the other child that doesn't do that. Right? It's not that you're not connected to the other child, but the other child just doesn't do that. And so that connection that you have, that sense of affinity, to both of them, here, which one do you feel closer to? Whether you like it or not, the one you're going to feel closer to is the one who seeks to please you all the time. Who wants to see that smile on your face. Who wants to feel that they gave you comfort because you comforted them when they were a child. Right? And you have that sense of affinity towards them, a little more than maybe the others. Not that you don't love both the same, but there's more affinity towards the other one, right? Your parents will tell you this. This is a shock to some of our kids. Don't be shocked, okay? But know that that's the case. It's exactly like, let me give you another example. You've got two friends. A friend who only hits you up when they're in trouble and they want money. Right? We all have that friend. Maybe a relative too. And then we have another friend who's always asking about you, always checking up on you, right? When they travel, they always bring you a gift because they're like, oh, this thing reminded me of you, right? Reminded me of our friendship. Oh, you mentioned this that day, and wow, it's so great. I remembered you when I was in this location and I was talking to this individual, right? Which one are you most likely to have an affinity to? The one who only hits you up when they need something, or the one who always asks about you? The one who always remembers you. And it's no different with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our relationship with Him. Which one do you want to be? The guy who hits Allah up only when he's got something and he needs something? Or the one who constantly seeks to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Which one? The one who constantly seeks to please Allah. And that just makes logical sense. Agreed? If you agree, say I agree. Good. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give me those opportunities. It just makes logical sense. So once I surpass the first level of tests and trials and tribulations, I'm going to be stronger, better equipped. Just like when I'm hit with a virus and my body develops antibodies and my body becomes strong, my immune system becomes strong enough to be able to do what? That when that virus comes to me again, my body isn't affected. It's totally protected now, right? Now bring me the next virus, you say. Right? So now logically speaking, and we're still in the logical discourse, by the way, okay? Logically speaking, what's happening here is not just deep thinking, okay? Not just deep thinking. But what's happening here is I'm realizing then that every single thing that I go through in my life is truly for a purpose. And so what I have to do is realize that when Allah gives me something, a test, whether that test is from Him directly or from other people's choices, or my own choices, that this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to be able to strengthen myself through the struggle, to become a stronger believer, to elevate my level in Iman. And if I do so, right, my faith is going to uplift me, right, and allow me to transcend and rise to higher, loftier levels. Make sense? If it makes sense, say it makes sense. And so now what am I going to do? What do I understand now? I understand that my mindset should really be, when an opportunity, and by the way, this is only when you hit that level where, you've gone through a few calamities and now you've done a lot of contemplation and life has hit you hard. Okay? You get to a point when you believe that this is all from Allah and Allah does not burden you with more than you can handle, and you're about to rise to the next level, you're like, bring on the struggle. Bring on the calamity. Let me see how I will handle it. And when it comes, you will recognize it. Right? And if you don't think that way, now you know how to think. Once a calamity comes, once a struggle strikes, once you're challenged by something, you're going to say, oh, I'm only going to be stronger after this. Right? Oh, bring it on. It just started, man. Let the games begin. Right? It's on. Right? Let's go. My son always said, let's go. Right? This is it. This is crunch time. Now I'm going to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the level of my faith. My resilience, what He's given me, how it is that I can now rise above the calamities and show you, oh Allah, how much I appreciate you. Because I am never alone. And this is the secret to it. You see, when we're in challenges, what happens to us? When we're not connected to Allah, we start to think that we're alone and there's nobody that understands us. Am I right? If I'm right, say you're right. But in reality, I'm not alone, am I? Am I ever alone? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we proved, is unlimited, which means He's everywhere, which means He sees me at all times. He hears me at all times. And so all I need to do is call out to Him. Ya Allah, I know I'm not alone. I know You see my struggle. I know this is from You, and if it's from someone else, then I know You won't burden me with more than I can handle. Oh Allah, I need You by my side. Help me through the struggle. Allow me to rise above it. Allow me to transcend to higher levels. Do you think you can do that? Do you think you can do that? Now we look at the academic perspective. Look at how much our intellect has helped us move forward. Isn't it beautiful, the intellect? Right? Now let's look at what academics tell us. And I'm going to talk about two books in particular. Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, and Kelly McGonigal's book, The Upside of Stress. Okay? Take those two titles down, or those two names. These two women are experts in stress and mindset. Now, what do I need when I go through challenges? I need to understand how to deal with stress, and I need to know what kind of mindset I should be in. Agreed? Right? So, in her book, Mindset, Carol Dweck, she says something really interesting. Based on the studies that she did, she says that, she gives an example. She says in one case study, they had two groups of students. One group was a group of Japanese students. Another group was a group of American students. They gave them puzzles, mind puzzles, okay? And they found that the American students, unfortunately, they just wanted the challenge to finish, and they wanted the answer right away. But the Japanese students, no. When the time was up, they wanted more time. They didn't want the answer. They said, no, don't give me the answer, right? I want this challenge. I can figure it out. I know I can figure it out. Just give me the time. So what did she find? She found that the difference in mindset is that these individuals have what is called a fixed mindset, while the Japanese students have a growth mindset. What's the difference between the two? Let me give you an example. This is also another study she mentions in her book. She says that you have students who have high IQs, and you have students who have lesser IQs. These students who have the higher IQs have a tendency that if they're wrong, they feel embarrassed, according to the studies. And so they fear asking questions because they fear being wrong in front of everyone. They have a fear of embarrassment, right? Because they have a standard they have to uphold, right? What will people say about me? لك أنت ابن فلان كيف تسأل هالسؤال? Right? Don't you know who your dad is? Right? Like, why aren't you understanding physics? It's easy. I'm an engineer. How could you not be born an engineer? Right? So what automatically happens in this type of household as well is there's such a high expectation for the child to be right all the time, right? That they fear being wrong. And the only way to learn is to make certain mistakes, right? We wouldn't be able to fly and be in outer space if the Wright brothers didn't make mistakes while they were flying. If a few people like Da Vinci with his bird, right? Some idiot didn't wear it and fly off the side of the cliff and plop and die, right? There have to be sacrifices, right? Right? For the greater good. In order for me to grow, I have to fail once and twice and 3 and 4 and 5, 6, 7, 8 times until what happens? Until I rise and learn from my mistakes, right? Until I get better. But the secret is that between each one, I'm tweaking, right? It's exactly like when you're taking your free throw, right? When you're at that free throw line, and you want that beautiful swan there pointing right. Your finger is going to go to the side a little. Your elbow might go out instead of it being in, right? You got to make these adjustments. Your knees, maybe they're not bending enough. You got to bend. You got to go from your feet. The shot starts with your feet, right? Okay, am I right or am I wrong? When you want to hit that spiral, right? You got to make sure that your fingers are on the laces, right? You got to make sure your elbow is in, right? You got to make sure that when you crank it right. So this is only going to come with practice. Agreed? If you agree, say I agree. And that means that you have to have a growth mindset. You can't accept failure. Now, can there be individuals that have both a growth mindset and a fixed mindset together? Yes, that can be the case. You might have a growth mindset in certain things. Like you might be, for example, a great basketball player. The reason why is because you practice and practice and practice. Right? You adjust and tweak and that's what makes you a great basketball player. But when it comes to your schoolwork, you're too afraid to make mistakes. You're too afraid, right? That could happen. Am I right or am I wrong? If I'm right, say you're right. You could tell that it made me feel good, right, when you said that? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So, Kelly McGonigal, what does she say in her book, The Upside of Stress? So now I understand then that really I need to have the right mindset, right? A growth mindset, not a fixed mindset, according to modern psychology. In The Upside of Stress, there was a study that, and by the way, Kelly McGonigal, she has a great TEDx talk if you want to watch it. I'm not getting any money for plugging her, but I've read her books. She's got some really good books. So does Carol Dweck as well. And she mentions, that most of her studies and most of her, the bulk of her work as a PhD was telling people to stay away from stressful situations, right? Because it's bad for your health, it's bad for your heart, right? Stress is bad for your system, right? But then she discovered within the studies that there's a group of people who through stress, they actually grow and become stronger and healthier. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If you look at examples of athletes, for example, right? You don't become stronger as an athlete unless you put stress on your system. Agreed? Right? On your body, right? If you don't lift weights, you're not going to have that bulk and those big guns. Right, brothers? Right? That's the truth, right? If you don't lift more and more when you're squatting, then you're not going to get that lift when you want to jump in the air and catch that ball, like a Heisman Trophy winner. Right? You just won't get those hops. You need them, right? You need that extra weight, that extra, put more plates, let me show you and you try to jump, right? Now, and you do all that exercising, you put in all that time, you're stressing your body. Why? So that it improves and gets better. In actual fact, when you stress your muscles, what happens to them? The weak muscles break down and stronger muscles and cells build up in their place. And it's the same thing when it comes to what? Let's say, for example, I watch minutia all the time on TikTok. You guys know what minutia is, garbage, right? And you are what you watch, you are what you eat. There I go thinking out loud again. Okay? All of a sudden now you start changing. Someone sent you a message, watch this video and look at how this person is talking about this topic, and now that sparks your interest. Now the algorithm reads it, right? Because we're all slaves to the algorithm, right? So the algorithm starts to push out certain information, right? That now is more like, Islamic content is coming your way, right? And you see, the cool Muslim fashionistas, and you see all of the cool sheikhs out there, the TikTok sheikhs and the IG sheikhs and all of that. And now all of a sudden you're gaining info, right? And now you're asking what's right and what's wrong. Now you're in an epistemological dilemma, right? And you come to the center, right? And in hopes to find a sheikh to ask, is this right or is this wrong? Sheikhna, I get these questions. Sheikhna, I saw this on TikTok. Is it true or is it false? Right? Wallah, you're laughing, but I'm telling you, it's true. Okay? And I'm happy when that happens. You know why? Because at least we have the sense to understand that I have to decipher between truth and falsehood. Right? That's a wonderful thing. Not that you're on TikTok all the time, that you want to decipher between truth and falsehood. Okay? Right? And that's what we should always do. We're always going through this epistemological dilemma, right? This epistemological challenge. It's important for us in order to gain knowledge, right? If I don't challenge my brain and I don't feel my brain stressed, sometimes, I remember, my child, one of my kids would say to me, I'm studying so much. I feel like my head is going to blow. I'm studying so hard, right? And you feel that stress, especially before an exam, right? You feel that stress in your brain, like something's happening in there, right? But then when you're done the exam and you did well because you studied hard, you feel relieved, right? But when you didn't study enough, what ends up happening, right? You feel stressed again. But really, what you should take it as is what? Not with a fixed mindset, but with a growth mindset and say, you know what? I'm never going to put myself in this situation again. Tawbah. I'm never going to do this again. Right? I'm never going to cram for an exam again. And then next semester comes and you're cramming again. What can I tell you? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So then it's important for us to have a growth mindset even when we're facing stress. They're telling us what? Now, in this one study she mentions in the upside of stress, she says that there were two groups of people. One group, both groups had to take a test, but one group, they primed them. They sat them down, they said, listen, it's not a big deal, it's just a test, it's going to end, right? Your grade isn't a big deal either, don't stress. The other group, no, they did the exact opposite with them. This is an important exam, it's going to tell us about your IQ, how smart you are, how you deal with stress, what you are as an individual. And they felt like they were going to be judged. They put both into the examination room, and they had the invigilators, the monitors, right, come and specifically those who were in the second group, right, they had to stress them. Time's running out. Time's running out. Time's running out. You got to answer this quickly. You got to answer this quickly. There's no time, right? If you don't know it, you got to answer it. Instead of if you don't know it, move on to the next question, right? So at the end, when they tallied up the results, what did they find? They found that those who were primed, who were told, oh, it's not a big deal, it's just a limited thing, you're going to get through it. It doesn't count for anything. Those guys all scored 75% and more, which was a passing grade. But in the other group, those who were distressed, right? Almost all of them failed. Almost all of them failed. When asked why, for each group, the first group said, well, we didn't feel like it was a big deal, and if I didn't know how to answer a question, I just moved on to the other one. It wasn't a big deal. But the others, they got that whole, when you get that mental block in an exam, and then you're stuck on that one question, and for some reason, you're so stuck on that one question that you can't move on to the next one. Next thing you know, the time is up and you haven't finished your exam. Has that happened to anyone? I remember that happening to me in university and high school as well, right? Why did that happen? Because I was so stuck on getting that right that I lost track of what I could have gotten right, right? I got stuck on what I'm getting wrong. And that's what I can't do. So the growth mindset allows me to see beyond that, right? That mindset is important for me to have in exams, in studies, and in life in general. Got it? If you got it, say I got it. If it's khosh, say khosh. Ahsanta. All right, so now we understand then that modern psychology and academia actually tell us that stress is good for you if you approach things with a growth mindset, right? Not a fixed mindset. Now, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell me? And what does His religion of Islam tell me? We started with this beautiful verse, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ. And surely we will try you and test you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't mince words. Okay? He doesn't mince words. He's telling you, listen, this is an open book exam. I am telling you what you're going to go through. And you know what? Allah says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We created men into hardship. But then He tells us, He says, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Surely with hardship, with squeeze, there is ease. Right? And He emphasizes again, He repeats it. He says, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. That surely with squeeze, there will be ease. Right? So Allah, in this verse, because I'm going to ask Allah, I'm going to say, well, what am I going to face? Like, can I understand what I'm going to handle here? It's exactly going into a project, right? When you're going into a project, What do you want to know? You want to know all of the factors surrounding the project, right? What do I need to know here? Who are the stakeholders, right? What are the different milestones that I have to achieve? Correct? Okay. What am I going to go through? What expectations? I have to plan for the things that are going to go wrong. So I do a SWOT analysis, right? Figure out what all the threats are, right, etc., right? And I start making for myself smart goals so that I make sure that I'm able to achieve, things within a set schedule, right? I make sure that it's manageable. Allah says, look, let me tell you, from now, this is what you're going to go through. I'm going to test you with what? بشيء من الخوف, a little bit of fear. I'm going to put you in situations where you're going to feel fear. Fear of failure, fear of danger, right? Fear. You're going to feel fear. Right? How many of us have felt fear in our lives? See, Allah's telling the truth. Right? So He says, I'm going to test you with a little bit of fear. بشيء من الخوف والجوع, and a little bit of hunger. Right? ونقص, and a deficiency. في الأموال, in your wealth. والأنفس, and in your health. والثمرات, and in the fruits of your labor. You might work hard at something, right? And then all of a sudden, everything that you worked for, you could lose in a minute. It could just happen, right? You can buy that Bitcoin and then all of a sudden, Dogecoin goes all the way down. And you worked hard for your money. Right? You put that $12 in before Bitcoin was known. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. So then, Allah is telling me exactly what I'm going to go through. I'm going to feel fear. I'm going to feel hunger. I'm going to, Allah is going to make me feel deficiencies in my health and in my wealth and in the fruits of my labor. وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. But then He tells me, وَبَشِّرَ الصَّابِرِينَ. He says, look, the formula, the secret. And listen, Islam is a beautiful religion. It's a religion of formulas, right? Remember how yesterday we said, Allah says, أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول, or أطيعوا الله والرسول لعلكم ترحمون, obey Allah and the Messenger, so that Allah may have mercy upon you. So look at the formula. Obey the Messenger equals obedience to Allah, and that means that you will receive the rahmah of Allah, the mercy of Allah. It's very simple, right? The Prophet says, أنا وكافل اليتيم كهاتين. Me, I, the Prophet says, and the sponsor of an orphan are like these two fingers. We're tight. We're this close. Okay? Which means that if I want to go to heaven, right, what do I need to do? Sponsor an orphan. Simple religion of formulas. Allah tells me what I'm going to go through. And then He tells me, listen, this is how you're going to navigate through this. He says, وَبَشِّرَ الصَّابِرِينَ. And give glad tidings to those who are patient. Right? And there is no better manifestation or reflection or practice of patience than what? Than fasting. Than fasting. In another verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, in verses 45 to 46, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He says, speaking about those who are going through a calamity or a hardship, right? He says, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ, and seek refuge and help in patience and in prayer. وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. And surely it is hard to do except for those who have presence of heart, who have God-wariness, who know they're in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who know that Allah is with them in all cases and all instances, with every breath that they take and every thought that they make. You see? So, okay, الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُوا رَبِّهِمْ وَأَنَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ راجعون. Who are these people? وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. Surely it is hard except for those who have presence of heart and know that they are in the presence of Allah and that they are not alone. Right? Because those are the ones who will say what? These sabirin. Allah describes what they do. Right? الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُوا رَبِّهِمْ. They believe that they will meet their Lord, that this is a limited test of this world. Exactly as we figured out in our logical discourse, you see? Right? الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُوا رَبِّهِمْ. This world is going to end. I'm going to meet my Lord. And that to He they shall return. الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُوا رَبِّهِمْ وَأَنَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ راجعون. And that to Him they shall return. So what am I going to answer Allah when I come back? I'm going to say, look, I did exactly what you wanted. I made sure that you were pleased with me, so I followed all of your laws. I was resilient, right? I was patient and tolerant. right? And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He says, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, right? In verse 156, He says, and give glad tidings, 155, He says, give glad tidings to those who are patient, right? Allah says, أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَلَوَاتٌ مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ. He says, these individuals, upon them, if they are patient, He says, Allah will bestow upon them His praise, salawat, wa rahmah, and mercy. And Allah will deem them worthy of being called those who are what? Who are rightfully guided. How many of us want that title? Muhtadeen. What is the name of Imam al-Hujjah, his nickname, that we know him for? Al-Mahdi, the one who is rightfully guided, the source of guidance, right? So we want to be of al-Muhtadeen, which means we have to realize these are the calamities I'm going to go through, this is what I'm going to feel, this is what I'm going to lose, and now this is what I must do. I must be patient. And when you go through calamities and challenges, if you find yourself unable to navigate through them, then all you have to do is go back to that mindset. I'm from Allah, to He I shall return. This is a limited test in life. And it's a struggle, and this struggle will come to an end. And this struggle is customized for me from Allah. And Allah will not burden me with more than I can handle. Whether it's fear, or loss of life, or loss of health, or loss of wealth, right? I can handle it because Allah will not burden me with more than I can handle. And therefore, oh Allah, bring it on. Bring on the challenges. Bring on the struggles. Why? Because we notice in the hadith, what does the hadith say? Prophet Muhammad is narrated to have said that أكثر الناس ابتلاءً, out of all people, the most who go through trials and calamities are who? Al-Anbiya, wal-Awsiya, wal-Awliya, wal-Mu'mineen. The prophets, the best of human beings, the best of Allah's creations. The prophets, right? The imams, their disciples, and the believers. So you're in good company if you're going through such calamities and trials and tribulations. I'm going to ask for this, and if I don't receive that trial and that tribulation, I'm going to start wondering, am I doing something wrong? Or have I just perfected this level and it's a matter of time? And when it comes, I need to be prepared, which means that every level, I really should be in a state of preparation. I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to see this reality. That He allows me to prepare myself properly. That He allows me to always remember that I am in His presence. That He allows this fasting to help me transcend to these levels that we've spoken about. So that my mindset is a growth mindset. So that when Imam al-Hujjah comes, who is he looking for? But those who have that growth mindset. Those who are al-Muhtadeen, who are to follow al-Mahdi, ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. Allahumma ja'alna min al-Mahdiyin ya arhamar rahimin. بحق سيدنا محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم اغفر لنا يا رب العالمين ووفقنا لما تحب وترضى. Oh Allah, make us successful in this world and in our fasting. Oh Allah, allow us to reach the levels that when Imam al-Hujjah appears, that he will know us and he will point to us and say, it's time. Join my ranks. You did what you needed to do. Will I be? Will I be the one who He chooses? Or no? Will I be worthy? That's the question I need to ask myself. And that needs to be the motivation with which I act. هذا والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين والفاتحة على أرواح المرحومين مسبوقة مشفوعة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. I don't know if they're giving us Q&A time.